PhD Flopper was introduced back in DLC 1's Ascension on Black Ops 1 Zombies, and it's not very difficult to see why it became such a likable fan favourite perk. 0 explosive damage, fall damage, and a fun, interesting, but harmless enough way of killing the zombies by dolphin diving from a great elevation. Alongside Stamin-Up, PhD instantly became likable, largely because there were only 4 perks available at the time, Jug and Speed Cola being regarded as some of the best perks, whereas Quick Revive and Double Tap being less effective. This made Stamin-Up and PhD instantly desirable. You wanted them over Quick Revive and Double Tap, especially in co-op. And as a result, these perks were brought back in every Black Ops 1 map. However, unlike Stamin-Up, PhD was rarely seen again after Black Ops 1 Zombies. And this begs the question, how would zombies have changed if PhD was introduced on all the maps? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. Starting in Black Ops 2, we have the Green Run maps, including Transit, and I think PhD would have made a massive difference on these maps, especially Town and Transit due to the Pack-a-Punch, Mustang and Sally, and Ray Gun. Realistically, this would have made the ray gun even better than it already is, especially since in Transit the jet gun doesn't take up a weapon slot, meaning you could run the ray gun and the Mustang and Sally's, at the very least until Buried released, where you would run the ray gun Mark II. Regardless, it would have made a massive difference to Transit, and it might have even lowered the damage you take from lava. Nuketown would have benefited from PhD in a massive way, due to the close-quartered nature of the map. Having, 0 explosive damage on the Mustang and Sally and the ray gun would have also made the map much more enjoyable, and likely a lot more beginner-friendly. Die-Rise technically had PhD Flopper on the map, although it was inaccessible, but joking aside, it would have made a massive difference. Mustang and Sally ray gun combo, as we've already discussed, however, the 0 fall damage would have been incredible on this map. Taking 0 fall damage would have just been far too overpowered, and dolphin diving off of certain towers and landing, relatively safely would have been very satisfying to do and would have elevated Die-Rise. No pun intended. Due to being a very close-quartered map, Mob of the Dead would also have benefited from this. It would have made the Vitriolic Withering do no damage to the player, and having the ray gun and Mustang and Sally, once again, you get the point. Essentially, close-quartered maps with 0 damage explosive weapons is a very good combo. Buried, I don't think would have benefited from PhD Flopper, largely because PhD already existed on the map in the form of a perma perk, and it had all of the same effects as PhD. No fall damage, no explosive damage, as well as having the flop. The only caveat being is that if you took fall damage while having the perma perk, you would lose it. Despite this, however, it didn't take up a perk slot, and it's very difficult to lose, so I don't think PhD would have made a difference. PhD would have also made no difference to Origins because, well, it was already on Origins in the Wonderfizz machine. But even despite this, I don't think PhD made that big of a difference to the map, largely because the explosive weapons were null and void in Origins. The Mauser did 0 explosive damage, and sure, you could run the ray gun, but you also had the staffs and the ray gun Mark II as an option. You also had things like the Magna Collider, the Scar H, etc. You really did not need the ray gun. Hell, even the wall weapons were really good on Origins. Simply put, PhD wouldn't have made a difference. For Exo Zombies, only the 0 explosive damage ability of PhD would actually be useful. This is because the Mayhem rocket launcher is the best weapon in the game, and basically the Helion Salvo 1.0. So having 0 explosive damage would have made this weapon even more overpowered, and it would have made the maps that it was featured on much more bearable to deal with. It would have made the mandatory challenges that less annoying, such as the Survivor Escort missions on Infection or the Search and Destroy rounds on Carrier. In other words, I think it would have made a pretty decent effect on Exo Zombies, but again, 2 of the abilities would be useless, only 1 of them would be good. I'm gonna say a maybe for Shadows of Evil. The no fall damage would be quite useful at times, and the 0 explosive damage could maybe mitigate some of the elementals or parasites, but again, explosive weapons were just so bad in Black Ops 3 that there's really no reason to use them over double Pack-a-Punch. PhD Flopper would have made no difference to the Giant, since double Pack-a-Punch was the way forward. The explosive weapons unfortunately fell behind as they couldn't have access to this infinite damage mechanic. Once again, I'm gonna say a maybe for Horizon Track. I see PhD becoming quite useful at dealing with the Panzer's shock charge ability, but that's really about it. Obviously the flop is useless and there's really no instances where you can take fall damage on Horizon Track. So I'm gonna say a maybe for this map. Zetsubo is also kind of a maybe. There were a few instances where you could maybe take fall damage, and whilst I don't think any of the bosses do explosive damage, PhD could maybe make you more resistant to the spores, so that when you burst them you don't randomly go into a coughing fit. But that's really about it, and that is me being very generous. Garrod Krovi, I think it would actually make quite a big difference, largely because of all the bullshit that you have to deal with. It could maybe make you more resistant to the Dragon's Fire, similar to the Mask. It could make you more resistant to the Mangler's Sonic Blast, as well as the Valkyrie drones. Revelations, it would have made no difference whatsoever, largely because of how easy the map was. You had the Thunder Gun and the Apothicon Servant, you did not need PhD Flopper. You could say that the bosses were on the map, such as the Panzer, but when you can delete them in just a few shots regardless of the round, yeah, there's really no need for PhD on this map. Simply put, PhD Flopper would have made no difference whatsoever to Infinite Warfare Zombies, largely because the perk already existed in Infinite Warfare Zombies in the form of Bomb Stoppers, which gave you 0 explosive damage, as well as no fall damage. However, it also made you do more explosive damage to the enemy, meaning that essentially you were getting a better version of PhD Flopper in IW Zombies, so adding the OG PhD would have made no difference whatsoever. Similar with World War II Zombies, I haven't played all of the maps, so I don't think I'm quite qualified to give an opinion on this. However, from watching other people play it, I'm gonna say it would make no difference, largely because I don't see people using explosive weapons on that game. I see people using weapons like the PPSH or the LMGs or the Tesla gun or maybe the dual-wield pistols when you pack-punch them. But again, like, I think it had largely moved on by this point. Especially with the consumables that World War II Zombies had to offer, I don't think PhD would have made that big of a difference. You are probably noticing a theme right about now. Yes, PhD Flopper would also have made no difference whatsoever to Black Ops 4 Zombies because PhD Slider existed. And PhD Slider, in my opinion, was better than PhD Flopper, purely because you had much better explosive weapons at your disposal, namely the Helion Salvo. This weapon literally was better than all of the Wonder weapons, as well as the specialist weapons. It was beyond broken how you essentially had an infinite damage rocket launcher and it had a crap ton of ammo as well. PhD would have made no difference to this game. For Cold War Zombies, PhD would also have made no difference because PhD Slider was the most powerful it had ever been. Not only did it have the 0 explosive damage, however, it also had the ability to make you slide like the Flash. This paired with Stamin-Up made your mobility beyond overpowered. Yeah, having a weaker version of PhD in the game alongside the strongest version of PhD we've ever seen, yeah, it would have made no difference. You guys are probably expecting me to skip over Vanguard and pretend it doesn't exist. However, I actually have something to say about Vanguard Zombies. I think that PhD in this game would have made a pretty interesting difference, largely because unlike Cold War Zombies, which requires you to upgrade the perks outside of the game, PhD you would be upgrading whilst actively playing the map due to how Vanguard's perk system works. You buy a perk and it is shit, however you can keep buying it and you get a stronger effect. I'm curious as to how this would affect PhD Flopper. Maybe you could comment down your opinions down below. Maybe you would get the 0 explosive damage at level 1, then the fall damage, then the flop, and then maybe 2 new abilities. It's an interesting thing to think about. However, I don't think there are that many enemies that do explosive damage to you, and obviously the flop would still be useless, so I'm gonna give Vanguard Zombies a maybe. Well, there you have it. This fan favorite perk would have actually made barely any difference to Call of Duty Zombies in the subsequent games. That's not to say it wouldn't have been useful. In some maps, such as the Black Ops 2 ones, it would have made quite a big difference, and would have made the maps way better if it was included. But Black Ops 3 onwards, unfortunately, the meta had changed. Widow's Wine was the go-to perk in Black Ops 3, and would have made PhD redundant. Infinite Warfare had a stronger PhD flopper. World War II zombies probably wouldn't have benefited from it. Black Ops 4 and Cold War had an even stronger version of PhD in that game, and Vanguard may have benefited from it. It's kind of a questionable debate. Ultimately, PhD flopper is a thing of the past. People will remember Black Ops 1 zombies because of PhD flopper, and it will make that game even more special, as to access the perk, you have to play that game. However, I don't see it returning in the foreseeable future.